outside your window. The sky isn't blue. Neither is the ocean. Purple is an illusion. Pink has no wavelength of its own. Your eyes have a blind spot that your mind is constantly erasing. Your brain is quietly inventing the world around you. Aesop, the great storyteller from ancient Greece, once said, "Things are not always what they seem." Japanese author Haruki Murakami wrote, "What you see with your eyes is not necessarily real." Virtually every single blue-colored animal and plant in the world is faking it. And if you go back just a few thousand years, ancient people may have been blind to it entirely. None of this is fantasy. It's neuroscience, nature's greatest magic tricks, and the reality that fact is a lot more unusual than fiction when it comes to the world around you. Why is blue everywhere in nature, and yet virtually nowhere? Why is the word for it completely absent from ancient writings to the point that the greatest tale from ancient Greece turned the ocean red and the sky bronze? Why do our brains create colors that actually don't exist outside of our minds? And is it truly your eyes that see, or is it something else? Join me as we unravel all this and much more and enter the Codex Legendarium. I'm Shelby Melanson. If I asked you what the most common color in nature is, what would you say? You'd probably say blue, right? It shows up everywhere in nature and has a million different names. Sky blue, ocean blue, bioluminescence, blueberries, bluebells, blue jays, blue morpho butterflies, blue sapphire, the list goes on. It's also the world's favorite color, with 60% of men and 35% of women globally naming it as #1 on the rainbow. But what if I told you that all that blue isn't real? That blue doesn't really exist in nature virtually at all. But then, how can something be everywhere and nowhere all at once? Turns out, it might just be nature's greatest magic trick after all. Hear me out. What you see as blue isn't blue. True blue pigment is exceptionally rare in nature, with virtually everything and everyone, plants, animals, and organisms that look blue, using special tricks to appear that way. Let's start with plants, since they make up over 80% of the total mass of living things on Earth, and basically everything else eats them. True blue pigment straight up does not exist in any plant ever. As retired biosciences professor at Florida's International University, David Lee, explained in this article, quote, "There is no true blue pigment in plants. Only 10% of all flowering plants produce blue flowers as it is. And all of them, like hydrangea, bluebells, and morning glories, not to mention blueberries, same deal, do it by chemically manipulating a pigment that's actually deep red, not blue, called anthocyanins. Basically, by altering pH levels and/or mixing the red pigment with metal ions, the plants trick your eye into seeing blue. Besides that, common flowers like tulips, carnations, and roses don't even come in this fake blue variety. Although, if you happen to be a Nintendo fan, you might have noticed that there's a small nod to this real biological phenomena inside the Animal Crossing games of all things. The rarest possible flower in the game is none other than blue roses, which are not only extraordinarily rare, but only grow by way of a multi-step artificial breeding sequence between multiple hybrid flowers done by the player. The mythical flowers never appear in nature, just like reality. It's also a pain in the neck to get them to grow. Trust me. Back to blue. In the animal kingdom, many creatures get their coloring from what they eat. For instance, flamingos get their signature color from eating tiny red shrimp. But since there are no blue plants, why do blue animals look blue? There are virtually no mammals whatsoever that even appear blue, save for blue whales, and a couple of rare species of bluish cats, but both of those are actually just diluted gray. Birds, on the other hand, are a different story, with something scientists call structural coloration. From peacocks to blue jays to specially bred chickens, I know, all of them have microscopic structures in their feathers that scatter light, reflecting blue and scattering other wavelengths. But if you were to take one of those feathers and grind it up, you'd see that in reality, the vibrant color was just a trick of the light, and the feather dust is actually brown. Since I'm already making game references today, Stardew Valley makes a nod to breeding special blue chickens too, if you're friends with Shane. That whole light-reflecting microscopic structure thing applies to butterflies also, just like the beautiful blue morpho, which is also, in reality, despite its iconic vibrant blue, actually brown. Now, I said before that true blue virtually doesn't exist in nature. There are a couple of exceptions, just not the ones that you're likely to come in contact with in real life. Speaking of butterflies, the Obrina olive-wing butterfly is among the only creatures on Earth to actually create blue, as in blue pigment, naturally. Out of the air and into the sea, a couple of eye-catching fish called the mandarin dragonet and the psychedelic dragonet are also on the true blue list. They're among the only two vertebrate animals that have special cells that can actually create blue pigment, called cyanophores. Likewise, the blue sea star creates its own pigment too, using a combination of proteins combined with yellow, orange, and red pigments. I don't know why, but I just love looking at this guy. He's adorable. And just to round out the list, we have the ultra-rare blue lobster, roughly 1 in about 2 million in the wild. They only exist thanks to a genetic mutation, one that transforms a bright red pigment from their diet by combining it with a protein in their own bodies, and boom, it turns blue. Funny enough, that red pigment is exactly the same one that flamingos eat via shrimp. And that's it. That's the end of the real blue list. But why is there so little of it in the world, and why are so many creatures going to the trouble of trying to fake it? In nature, there are a ton of benefits to being blue. For plants, sending out blue flowers makes them extra visible and attractive to pollinators like bees and butterflies, so they get a competitive edge in growing the next generation of sprouts. For animals, bright blue colors help some species attract mates or even ward off predators like poison dart frogs. Both plants and animals also use blue colors to help stay cool in harsh sunlight by reflecting the blue light that comes from the sun. But creating real blue pigment is another story entirely. Real blue requires a complex molecular structure, one that absorbs non-blue wavelengths of light, which are all on opposite sides of the visible light spectrum. So creating that complex structure actually takes a lot of energy. And since survival in nature means conserving energy and being as efficient as possible, most animals and plants try to reap the benefits of being blue without actually spending the resources needed to actually be blue. Side note, maybe all of this definitively proves once and for all whether the dress was white and gold or blue and black. You decide. There you have it, the color that is simultaneously everywhere and nowhere all at once. But what if human beings didn't even know that blue existed back in ancient times because they couldn't see it whatsoever and also didn't have a word for it at all? This wild theory goes back to 1859 when former UK Prime Minister William Gladstone noticed something odd while reading the Odyssey. He realized that Homer's detailed description of things rarely included colors, and when they did, the colors he wrote about appeared to be a little misplaced. For instance, green honey, a bronze sky, violet sheep, and wine-dark seas, and a distinct and total absence of the color blue. So Gladstone did what any other curious mind probably would. He read other ancient Greek texts, and to his amazement, they didn't mention blue either. The discovery was so peculiar that others picked up the search as well. Philosopher Lazarus Geiger also got involved, and he started scouring for mentions of blue in texts from other cultures, from Chinese and Korean to Icelandic, Hindu, and Hebrew, and still found nothing. So, did ancient people lack the ability to see blue at all? Did they just not have words to describe it because they had never experienced it? Or is it something more? Well, some scientists have a theory that up until recently, virtually all humans were actually colorblind. Unfortunately, we can't exactly go back and ask them, that is, unless your time machine is in way, way better functioning order than mine is.
Well, we don't need roads.
So, in an attempt to solve that problem, British psychology professor Jules Davidoff decided to test out the next best thing. He ventured out to a remote part of South Africa in Namibia, on the search for a tribe of people called the Himba. You see, this small ethnic group's language has a unique feature: the absence of a word to describe blue. So, the professor ran an experiment. He showed each participant an image with several green squares and a single blue square. For the test group, obviously the control group had all green, to see if they could identify the blue square. To his surprise, most of the participants couldn't pick out the blue. And those that could only do it sometimes, and they often made mistakes. Though, interestingly, in another test, they were able to easily pick out squares of an ever so slightly different shade of green, no problem, which fits in with their language that actually has several different words for green. But, just like in the animal kingdom, the lack of blue in the ancient world did have a couple of rare exceptions. Most obviously in ancient Egypt, where ground limestone was mixed with minerals like azurite or malachite in order to create Egyptian blue paint for pottery, and that paint even decorated the tombs of pharaohs. The Egyptians also imported a bright blue mineral called lapis lazuli from the Middle East around 6,000 years ago, which mostly ended up being made into fine jewelry. It wasn't made into paint until it arrived in Europe in the 14th century, where they renamed it ultramarine, or beyond the sea. Archaeologists in Peru also recently found evidence that people in what we know today as Peru were dyeing textiles using plant-based dye called indigo also around 6,000 years ago, which is a vibrant, bluish, deep purple color. So, the color blue is faking virtually every single one of its appearances in all of nature, and it may have even been completely invisible throughout most of ancient human history. But it's still a real color that actually exists. But what if a color really didn't exist? And the reason that we think it's real is because our brains are straight up making it up. Roy G. Biv. You probably heard that acronym back in elementary school to help you remember the spectrum of colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. But isn't there something missing? That's right, the color of lavender fields and Spyro the Dragon. Purple. Not to be confused with violet, which is entirely different. And yet, science says purple doesn't exist. Let me explain. The colors on the Roy G. Biv spectrum each represent a certain wavelength of visible light. Some longer, some shorter. The long end starts with red, while blue, indigo, and violet are much, much shorter wavelengths. Typically, when our eyes detect a color that's somewhere in between two of those main colors, say teal in between blue and green, the light-sensitive cells in our eyes average out the two. Problem solved. But when your eye sees both red and blue wavelengths at the same time, there is no specific color in between because there's no overlap between the longest and shortest wavelengths on the spectrum, because every color is in between. The thing is, our brains do not like this kind of confusion, and tend to take it upon themselves to fill in the gaps in our perception with what they think should be there, even if it's a false reality. So, to fix the problem, your brain bends the entire color spectrum from a straight line into a circle, and creates a blend of the two. Purple, that doesn't actually exist outside the mind. Fun fact, pink is actually fake too, and yet another result of your eyes seeing red and blue, or red and violet at the same time. In other words, Both are quite literally pigments of your imagination. Yeah, I know, I'm on a roll today. What I personally find super interesting is that the color that doesn't exist also has historically become a symbol of power, luxury, mystery, and magic. It's the color of wizards, kings, and spiritual leaders, mostly thanks to a story from Greek mythology. According to Greek scholar Julius Pollux, the pet dog of a Phoenician god bit a sea snail while running along the beach. The dog stained its mouth a vibrant purple color, and the god immediately used it to dye a gown of the same color. Back in the human realm, that purple dye from that sea snail really does exist all over the Mediterranean Sea. People started harvesting them several thousand years ago in search of that coveted Tyrian purple dye that the snails contained. But the process was extremely difficult and expensive because each snail only contains a tiny, tiny amount of the vibrant color. Besides the fact that the colors you see every day are literal proof that your brain significantly alters your reality, all of this is significant for one other reason. Your eyes don't actually see. Your brain does. The best example? There is a literal blind spot in your retina, the part of your eye where light-sensitive cells live. It exists because that's where your optic nerve connects to your eye. Meaning, if what you saw actually matched reality one for one, there would be a small hole in the middle of your vision from each eye. For another example, if you want to try out something fun at home, check out some optical illusions, like the disappearing dot illusion. Wherever you look, black dots seem to disappear and reappear on parts of the chart that your eye isn't directly focused on. A more extreme version from a famous 1999 psychology study highlights this exact same thing kinda hilariously. In it, participants watched a video where two teams of basketball players passed the ball back and forth between them. They were asked to count the number of passes made by players wearing white shirts only. There were also players wearing black shorts passing the ball as well. But by the end of the video, they were so focused on the white shirt-wearing players passing the ball that more than half of them failed to notice that a person wearing a gorilla suit walked into the frame, beat on its chest, and walked away in the middle of the video. I tested this on my best friend while I was writing this script, and I can assure you, it totally works. This all ties into something neuroscience calls predictive processing. Your brain doesn't passively see reality. It predicts what it expects it should see, and then corrects errors as it goes along. The thing is, people have believed for thousands of years that the brain has way more of a role in seeing than meets the eye. A few months ago back in May, researchers from the UK and Sweden brought a light-sensitive organ buried deep in the human brain back into the limelight. It's called the pineal gland, or to some, the third eye. Biologically, science says this part of the brain receives information about light from your eyes and helps control your wake-sleep cycle, your circadian rhythm. Now, this new study describes this organ as a light-sensing organ that helped creatures in the distant evolutionary past to see underground. They're also changing up a long-held scientific theory that the pineal gland developed separately from the eyes over time. Now, they say the eyes and the pineal gland developed together, as if to suggest that they might function together, or at least did at some point. Now, personally, I don't subscribe to that theory on how humans became humans. I personally am a creationist, but I do think that this is one of those rare cases where something that was once completely written off by modern science as mystical or pseudoscience is actually getting reevaluated and shown to have scientific merit, even if the conclusions they come to based on the data aren't my personal cup of tea. We'd be here for a week if I talked about every single theory about the pineal gland. But, in my opinion, one quote from French scientist, mathematician, and philosopher René Descartes nicely sums up the more spiritual ideas about the third eye, that it connects the physical body with something more. Quote, "My view is that this gland is the principal seat of the soul, and the place in which all our thoughts are formed. The color blue isn't painted onto the sky or poured into the oceans, and it's absent from plants, animals, and ancient texts. Pink and purple aren't hidden somewhere inside flowers or sunsets. They're experiences, electrical patterns that your brain invents to ease confusion and fill in what it thinks should be there. The human existence never promised us truth. It promised survival. Every moment of your life, your brain takes incomplete information and transforms it into a world so rich and convincing that you forget it's a reconstruction. The tree outside your window, the face of someone you love, the stars above your head. None of them exist exactly as you experience them. You've never seen light. You've only ever seen what your mind believes light is. We spend our lives believing we're observers of the universe, but perhaps we're something closer to translators. Taking an incomprehensibly vast world and converting it into a story our minds can understand. And if something as fundamental as color can turn out to be an invention of the brain, it makes you wonder how many other things we believe are cold, hard facts are simply the best interpretations that we have, but in reality, are all wrong. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't what lies beyond our senses. It's how much of the universe hides from us in plain sight. But what do you think? Why is the color blue simultaneously the world's most common and most rare? Were ancient people actually colorblind to it? Why do our brains go to the trouble of simulating pink and purple if they don't really exist? And is it truly the brain that sees? I'd love to hear your thoughts all about this in the comments, and if you have an idea for something you'd like to see a future episode on, let me know. And of course, if you enjoyed this deep dive into mysteries, myths, culture, and science, please take just a second to like and share this video, hit the hype button, and if you want to see more, subscribe. We upload every Tuesday, and it really helps get the word out about the show. Until next time, stay curious and stay legendary. And real quick, before you go, YouTube thinks you're gonna like this video next, so you might want to check it out. Thank you.